The Changeling plays like no other faction before, and it honestly might not be for everyone. Personally, I love geopolitics and diplomacy, so this has me written all over it, but if you are purely blood for the blood god, it might not be your thing. But the economy, if managed poorly, this will definitely not be your thing. And I'm going to save you the first headache which I had when I first tried this campaign, because I've got 5 hot tips here so you can really enjoy this campaign for the unique goodness that it is. Welcome to Elven Plot Armour, and today we are running through 5 critical tips for the Changeling, as well as the first 10 turns for their campaign to set them up. Before we start step 1, you need to understand that there are 3 core buildings which will revolve your campaign around. The Changeling doesn't build any settlements at all, and the most important thing to understand is you dominate through buildings, not through military. So this is quite unique. Now, there are 3 types of buildings in your undercities, or cults in this case: income to pay for construction and your armies, supplies to build your buildings, and expansion, which will randomly allow the chance to spawn new cults in neighboring settlements. You can only build one of each of these buildings in each settlement, and they have one of 2 variants you can choose from: symbiotic, which will benefit the host, and then parasitic, which will typically cause more problems, as well as have higher risk of being discovered. So rule of thumb, you'll typically want more symbiotic because they will lower the chance of detection, whilst parasitic will increase them. And we're going to kick off our first point here, which is the income building. Now, you can build a parasitic building, but this only generates 150 gold, not very much. And if you center around these buildings, your economy will be starved very quickly. Instead, you need to build yourself around the blue symbiotic income building. But here's the catch: you need to build them in large provincial capitals, i.e. in our starting empire, Altdorf and Castle Drakenhof. These will carry 80% of your income throughout the entire game. Sure, in the opening turns, a couple of these parasitic income buildings will help just get you along, but after that, don't even worry about them, just go for these buildings. Because these blue symbiotic income buildings take a factor of their income away, you will want them to be developed, so over time they will develop and you will gain more from them over time. The question is, should you build this building everywhere? Well, absolutely not. You need to start off in provincial capitals. Whenever you establish a new cult or it automatically expands, take a look at the settlement and see what it will yield you. Here we can see this will yield us 284. That's higher than the 150. That makes this dead set the right way to go. If the building clearly yields no income at all, or less than 100 gold, hold off building it until it will yield you a decent return. This is absolutely the most important thing in the early game, because otherwise you will struggle to fund the Changeling's armies as well as any construction. Critical tip number 2, expansion. Now, there are 2 ways you can expand: either attack a settlement and you'll place a cult there, but this involves damaging it and leveling it down. So the more preferable way to establish a cult is actually by having it invade from a neighboring province, or a neighboring settlement in this case. So let's once again use this example here. If we build the parasitic expansion building, we gain 4%. Now, there is a symbiotic one which does 2%, but go for the 4. This is the best way to expand, and you do want to expand without actually damaging provinces. Now, every settlement neighboring here will have a 4% chance each turn to have a new cult established. So you essentially want to create a web of expansion here. So 4% to give 8 here. If we can get this one here, that will then compound to 12, and you can really start to expand like wildfire. Once you can see that there's a cult that no longer has any benefit, you can of course knock down the expansion building for a bit of extra cash, but don't go too overboard in expansion early on. Place these carefully, because each one takes away 100 gold of your treasury. So place them where they have many neighboring settlements. So don't forget that 100 gold cost. If you don't listen to step 1 and look after your income, and you build too many of these, you will go broke very, very quickly. So make sure you have them count, and remember, every single settlement that neighbors one of these is an extra 4%. So this neighbors here, here, and here. So that is a combined 12% value. Once you get to the late game where money is no object, make sure you build the income building. I call this the big 3, the parasitic expansion building, and of course the humble supply building, to make sure you always have cult supplies and grimoires coming in. So these 3 that I've highlighted on the screen here are pretty much the only tools you really need for your basic expansion. Tip number 3, your later military. Now, this is going to be a very different experience, because you're not going to want to paint the map with several armies at once. Instead, you'll want to have a few very meaningful armies walking around, causing chaos and letting your cults do a lot of the heavy lifting. But more importantly, the Trickster gets excellent buffs to his allied recruitment, improved stats, cheaper recruitment, and the best way to do this is to find either Festus in your starting province, Archaon once he works his way down, anyone that's evil that has some awesome units that you want, or even good units, because you could manipulate people with the following building. The Parliament of Lies over time increases diplomatic relations, and yes, you can stack this bonus by having these across all of their settlements, so it's a great way to get people who were at war with you back onto peaceful terms, get a military alliance, and then make some fun doom stacks of their units. It's very fun. If you haven't caught on here, unless it's expansion, go for the symbiotic buildings, they tend to be better. Don't worry about building military buildings unless you need a few more heroes to boost that cap. Once you expand into a new theatre, you can always build the Dark Ritual building, which in 10 turns will raise an army there for you. Hire the army, fill it up with military allies, and you're ready to go. Tip number 3 is rushing your legendary heroes as soon as possible. Playing as Tzeentch is so much more fun now because you have Occult Hellbrass on the front line smashing the enemy as well as providing replenishment. The blue scribes fly from above, bombarding enemy with heavy shots, spells, and an endless supply of winds of magic. Additionally, get a military alliance with Astragoth Ironhand and you will unlock the Hellforged materials, giving your blue horrors a grand total of plus 45% missiles, and extra hit and melee as well as even more barrier, so you will never have to worry, just go for your horrors, they won't let you down. In the later game, add some heroes, get some exalted pink horrors, and you won't have to worry about anything in your battles. Very, very strong. Very fun too. Now, the final and possibly most important tip I can give is the way you expand into new theatres. A quick tip is it's really tempting to attack Festus to get this replenishment buff. I don't think it's worth it. You can get a military alliance out of him and then use his units. The easier one to do is to simply sack Alt off early, I'll show you how to do this, whilst building up a cult and then using the Changing of the Ways to infect it with corruption. That's right, if you need to ever increase the corruption, simply build a cult and raise the lord of that settlement and then cast Spread Corruption, hide an ambush stance, and you will get an easy win. The combination of these will give you victory, and you absolutely should do this quest battle as quickly as possible because it's a lot of fun to see the Empire in turmoil. Now, you will have the choice here to either expand north into Kislev or get some Trickster cults in here in the Darklands, and you absolutely should because you can get that alliance with Astragoth Ironhand, gaining that extra 30% to missile strength, as well as most of these aren't too difficult to do down here. This frees up the Changeling to start marching to the west, go through, infect Bretonnia, infect Ulthuan, and even go to Lustria. These theatres are relatively easy to conquer, give decent rewards. It's just hilarious. You go on this pilgrimage of death and destruction and just make your way all the way over, and then I would do probably Nagaron last. As you complete quests and schemes, you will get access to build rifts, allowing you to teleport into new theatres of war. You will additionally get the ability to simply create a new Trickster in a theatre of your choice, allowing you to get really widespread tentacles across the entire world. Remember, go back to step 1, get that symbiotic income building to pay for itself, and then use your expansive parasitic buildings to get a network which will soon just spread like wildfire. You'll become incredibly rich. By the end of it, money will just be a laughable commodity. You just need to hang in there, follow these 5 tips, and just conquer whichever way you want. But in terms of the schemes, once you're out of the first theatre, you can go any way you want. But I do recommend try to tackle 2 theatres at once. It just keeps the momentum really good. The other great choice is actually sending a Trickster cultist to open up down here and then initiate dialogue with Kairos Fateweaver and make sure you build that diplomatic building in all of his provinces, allowing you to improve your relations. Taking on the High Elves in Ulthuan is very easy and a nice and easy theatre to also complete. The Darklands is full of really cool rewards, and Lustria again is a very nice easy one to do. But we're also going to cover the first 10 turns, which will knock off your first grand scheme, giving you an amazing start and launching point for you to expand into any theatre you want. And I'll also set you up to get the 2 legendary heroes nice and early. If you'd like to see the Yuan Bow 10 turn guide, just click below. If you'd like to see the Chaos Dwarf tier list, click here. Cheers for watching. I'll see you next time.